Zoom's simultaneous interpretation allows you to connect with colleagues and customers in multiple languages in a single Zoom meeting. With Zoom's unique audio channel architecture, meeting participants can select their language channel of choice to listen and participate in meetings. The meeting audio will be simultaneously translated into their preferred language by live interpreters, and participants will hear their translation at 80% volume with the original speaker at 20%, so they can still hear tone and intonation for greater understanding.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sustainable Trade Sessions. My name is Gretel Clausen. I am LETIS Development Manager and also Coordinator of the STS program. We appreciate your presence and we hope you will enjoy this webinar as much as we did preparing it. For those of you who are new to the STS program, let me tell you that the STS Focus is a non-profit training program specialized in technical and commercial areas. Our guest speakers are highly skilled professionals in each field. We would like to thank our sponsor, LETIS certification body, Onscreen interpreters, Blumen, Dawson, and Bose Global. This is a very special edition since we have the opportunity to offer you simultaneous interpretation for our British speaker. We are also very proud of reaching as many people as possible from different countries. As you have seen in the video at the beginning, you're able to choose between two available language channels, Spanish or English. Those of you who have chosen the Spanish channel are currently listening an interpreter while I speak English. This innovative simultaneous translation service is provided by one of our sponsors, Onscreen Interpreters. Thank you very much. They provide interpretation services for companies willing to make online business around the world. We hope you find this experience as exciting as we do. In this opportunity, we have the pleasure of presenting Victoria Baldson to talk about how to become a successful export story. Victoria is a multi-award-winning chartered marketer who has worked internationally through her career in startups, SMBs, and large corporation environments marketing and selling food, drinks, supplements, and medical devices around the world. She currently runs Bose Global, an international business consultancy and export solution providers to supporting companies operating in global food, drink, and supplement sectors. Victoria is a regular speaker, contributor, and trainer at export-related events, communities, and workshops, both in the United Kingdom and overseas for private and public governmental organizations. Victoria will present on the potential issues that companies face when exporting, and she will also provide tools to overcome them. In addition, among other topics, she will speak about key global markets where organic products have strong export opportunities. At the end of this talk, we will open an instance of questions, so please leave your questions on the Zoom chat. You can write them in English or Spanish. Also remember that the recording of this talk will be available in both languages in our social networks in a few days. So let's begin. Welcome, Victoria. The screen is all yours.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Gretel, for that introduction. And thank you so much for inviting me here today to talk to you all on the topic of how to become an export success story. I'm really excited to be here. There's lots of different countries and industries within food, drink, and agriculture who are present on this webinar today. And I hope you find the next 20 or so minutes useful for you. Whether you are at a point of exporting already within your companies and organizations that you work for, or if you're already exporting and having some success overseas, to take this as an opportunity for you to reflect a little bit, consider some of the things you're doing at the moment, and hopefully come out of this session with a bit food for thought, as we would say in English, and some key practical steps for you to take forward and keep progressing your internationalization journey. So let me share my screen with you for the presentation. There we go. There we go. Brilliant. So let's take you through the next few minutes. Like Gretel said, I really want this to be a practical session, and we're very open to questions. So please do, at any point something crosses your mind, any questions you want to ask, do put them into the Zoom chat and we can discuss them at the end of this session. Okay, let's just move this on. So just a little bit about myself and Bols Global, as Gretel kindly introduced me. I think she said most of the things that cover who I am and what I do. I am actually multilingual myself. I do speak Spanish. I know we have a large Spanish speaking community online today, although I've been asked to obviously do this talk in English as well. So speak Spanish and French. I'm a marketeer by background, so started on the marketing side and business development. We help a number of companies around the world with international marketing and business development specifically. We are an international business consultancy and export services provider for businesses around the world wanting to grow and wanting to increase their international trade. So let's move on. So in terms of what I want to cover for the next, for this session in the next 20-30 minutes, as I said, the areas I want to think about and touch upon. First of all, why consider exporting in the first place? Like I say, if you're not already, some of the benefits, and if you are, just to, you know, when the going is tough sometimes on international trade and development, reminding yourself why you're doing this, and it is worth it all in the end. I'm a huge advocate, having worked across many different countries, regions, cultures over the years. It's a fantastic way of growing your businesses, but equally growing personally as well when you're working across different cultures, languages, ways of working. It's an incredibly rewarding way of professionally developing and personally as well. Let's talk about that. Then we'll move into key success factors from my experience throughout the years, what I believe are some of the challenges that most businesses around the world do face when they're internationalizing, and equally then some of the ways to look about how to improve and develop and get around some of those challenges. And then, like I say, because of it being a practical session, and I'm all about trying to have something practical to take away, for you to think about what could be your next steps wherever you are in this journey on exporting your products and growing as well. And then at the end, I'll just touch upon some free resources that we have available online at Bols Global that we're offering to you as well. Okay, so in terms of exporting itself and why should you even consider it, in terms of the UK market, I have some statistics being based here that it proves and shows that exporting has a number of benefits for businesses in doing so. From a business perspective, it makes you more productive, and again, with surveys undertaken by the British government, it has shown that those companies served are over 1/3 more productive in their activities, in their reach, and in their businesses in general. Equally, it helps to recession-proof some of those businesses, which again, considering the current situation, is quite an important aspect, that through diversifying your customer base and having customers in different countries, that can help de-risk and stop any likelihood of any problems within the business and any survival as well. There was a recent survey also carried out in the UK with the Federation of Small Businesses, and also with that, they found that in terms of turnover, there was a large increase, almost 3 times turnover that was increased through the companies that were exporting versus the companies that were not. And as I say, there's a number of ways that by exporting, by going into new markets and finding new business opportunities, it can bring benefits to your business as well. One of the key areas could be innovation, and that could be innovation in product ideas, going into new markets, seeing what's currently there within your category, and can bring back some ideas for you to develop new products. or processes within the materials that you're using within your processes. Could be packaging innovation as well. Potentially, if you have packaged goods, you could see either materials or the way that a product's packaged through another brand that could be of interest as well. Number of benefits to consider, and I'm a key advocate, as I say, of taking your products overseas. Another factor, and Gretel had sort of mentioned, in terms of looking at the organic market particularly, evidently I'm aware that there's quite a lot of people on the call today who are working within the organic area. This is a huge market opportunity globally at the moment, and I wanted to share with you some key statistics around the organic market, which actually you may find some of it quite surprising, and others maybe it might reiterate some of the opportunities that you're already seeing in some of the markets overseas. Interestingly, if you look at the organic market, and there's some statistics on the slide there, when you look at the size of the market in terms of land and organic farmland, we have Australia as the key one from a land mass point of view, Argentina and China that have the biggest globally size of available organic farmland. When you turn to actually producers, so who are actually cultivating and using the land, and perhaps surprisingly for some, it may be interesting to see that India tops the list there. Then you have Uganda and Ethiopia within the top three. I should say these are 2018 published statistics with the FIBL. And finally, in terms of retail sales and value, so where are the organic consumers buying these types of products across the organic category? Probably unsurprisingly, the US is the largest market, which at the moment, as of 2018 statistics, it was a market size of about 44 billion euros, followed by Germany after that at approximately 10 billion euros, and France in third position. Interestingly, when you then have a look at the consumption spend per citizen, you would then be looking at the European markets, such as Denmark and Switzerland, who have the highest per capita spend on organic products. And equally interestingly, when you look at the overall market within retail, Denmark is the highest, with almost 12% of their overall food market now being dedicated to organic, the organic produce and organic items. So interesting to see, and it's interesting to think how that might fit in if you are an organic producer with your current plan and strategy and the markets that you may be looking at or considering. I wanted to also touch on the wider health and wellness market, which again is a huge growing category globally. Interestingly, we do a lot of work within the Gulf and the Middle East, and it's a booming area within there. The health and wellness sector is increasing year on year. Obviously, there's some of that which is through the COVID pandemic has been accelerated, but even before that, we were seeing significant growth in that area. And in terms of specific categories, I would say that the fortified products within drinks, for example, with vitamins, healthy fast food, so that ability to give food on the go but quicker, that is healthy, truly healthy, and plant-based meat replacements are growing massively as well in that part of the world. I should say as well, if we, just a statistic which I think quite interesting in terms of the global retail market at the moment with what's happening during COVID, there's actually going to be this year a predicted increase of almost 8% global growth this year within the global retail sales market. Obviously, there's been a large decrease in food service as a result of obviously restrictions and lockdowns in various countries. So some of that switch of spend has obviously gone over into retail, which as producers that you are within this field, it does create again a global opportunity for you, particularly if you are operating in the retail sector, to see where your product that could be in high demand in certain markets could be obviously clearly that could be developed through the right partners and the right channels as well. So let's move on to the part around key success factors. So this is drawing on my experience of brands, manufacturers that I've worked with over the years, and where I see the most important aspects that you need to consider during your exporting or your journey onto exporting that will give you the best success. And you may find this surprising, but I would say above anything else, it has to be that you have the right mindset in order to do this, and the commitment in the longer term in order to succeed. Selling overseas, understanding new markets, then getting your products into market and developing them is not a short-term solution. It is a long-term commitment. It requires a number of assets and support from your side as business owners, organizations, employees to make it successful. And it's those companies and brands that commit to this in the longer term that are willing to realize it will take a period of time to enter markets, to have that success, which is crucial. Not giving up too early and to keep going once you've committed to that path is really, really important. And, you know, I understand, and maybe it's a case of thinking about where you're at the moment and what your mindset is. A lot of companies I see are quite, if you're not selling internationally already, can be quite fearful of it because it is an unknown. If you've not done it before, obviously there's extra considerations, legislation, aspects around logistics, transportation, perhaps labeling that you need to consider as part of this. You're also working with other cultures, other languages, other ways of doing business that you're not familiar with. And so I just sort of say to people, have a think about how you feel about that, and where's your mindset at the moment. Are you ready to do this? Are you willing to kind of go into some of those unknowns and be able to work through them? And it's a constant evolution of learning and being quite resilient in order to get success, and you have to be okay with that, and in that sense it's not always for everyone. It's also about having a vision in the longer term for your business that includes international. It has to be on the agenda for your businesses at the top level in order to be successful. It has to be driven in that way as well. So is it part of your vision for your business and the mission that you're trying to achieve with your organizations? And if it isn't, that's absolutely fine. And maybe that's the case of saying, is it right to you, you know? But if it is, and you have that global ambition, it's then about the success in terms of committing to it and having the mindset to go after the global markets that you choose to do so. The other thing I would say, which a lot of companies don't have, is a clear export strategy and plan. Now, in the UK, there was a recent survey with the Chartered Institute of Marketing and PwC. They surveyed a number of exporting companies across different industries, and actually they found that only 1/3 of current exporting companies do actually have a concrete written document and plan for how they go out to market, what they offer, and where they're going. And you know, for me it's so important, and I see this when companies don't, that, you know, exporting has happened as reactive opportunism. You know, somebody has come to you and you've been able to realize the opportunity. Okay, great. But actually doing it in a much more strategic and proactive way, knowing what your offer is for international in the first place, and within that considering various other factors that you have to take into account, understanding what your route to market is as well, because obviously it won't necessarily be the same as how you serve your domestic customers, and knowing some of the other considerations, and also where the focus is. You know, the focus, and again there's data around that companies have much more success when they focus on a number of smaller markets that they target, as opposed to having a more wider approach and trying to get here and here and here and here. So again, which markets are you looking for, or which ones seem to have the most potential for you? And that's about creating the parameters that are right for you and your business. So to give you an example, we're working at the moment with a client in the alcohol industry, and they came to us wanting to sell overseas but not knowing where to start. So we've been in a process of basically understanding what the international offer is going to be. So that has been looking at a number of factors within the portfolio. They have a large product selection. We don't want to take everything. So where are the best opportunities? So we've worked at looking at which kind of products, what product sizes. They offer different sizes within their bottles. Well, what's the market data showing us in terms of consumption rates, growth, the competitive landscape as well that exists in particular markets, as well as other factors around, for example, how easy is it to actually do business in that market? What are the potential regulatory challenges that we might face, which again is a factor as to whether we, through our market selection, decide to go for that market or to focus on this market instead. And going through that is an important step to help you have a roadmap, know where you're going, what you're focusing on, and what success is going to look like for you. So I wanted to, have a reflection on that and think, is it something you've already done? Have you carried out this kind of exercise already within your business, if you're already exporting? Or if you aren't, consider that and think about some of the issues and the parameters you want to put in place in order to make the right choices with the markets, with the offer that you're taking out, and the timescales as well. There's a couple of models I wanted to show you on here that we use with some of our clients, which is quite useful. Again, I've not got time to go through it all in detail here, but at least it will give you an idea, and you can have the slides afterwards and work through them. And if you want to contact me for any details or how this works, feel free to do so. This is one that collates quite a lot of the key aspects to think about in an export plan and strategy. It doesn't have to be a huge document, but you need to be clear on certain aspects. So this is what we call the Bols Global C matrix, helps you to see where you're going and what you're doing. So this is around looking at the different C's, which we have in the table: your customers, collaborators, the competition, local and international, and any potential substitutes for your product as well. Don't forget that. Your costings, and on what, for example, how you're selling the products. Obviously customs, the regulatory side is an important aspect, which we'll come back to in a bit. And the culture, which I think often people overlook that aspect of doing business. And actually culture is, it is one to not dismiss. I'm currently working at the moment on a business deal between a Greek manufacturer and a Kuwaiti distributor, and it's challenging because in terms of we're at negotiation stage and having to work with the different cultures. In terms of the Arab culture, very much wanted to negotiate and drive down some of the pricing and barter. The Greek feeling that they're giving the best price and why do they want more, and feeling offended by some of those tactics, and having to be in the middle of this and reassure them that the way that they're reacting is in part cultural, and also we're trying to work together to get a deal and understand the viewpoints of the different parties. So it's don't underestimate the importance of that, and I would always say listening to the other party and trying to understand is key in this, particularly once you start dialogues with different markets. And this is an ongoing process with a plan and a strategy that can change. It should be flexible. We've seen with COVID and with everything that things can change so quickly, and we have to be flexible with the planning, but have something that guides you is key. Another aspect that is helpful, like I say, is this agility and flexibility within your business and within your means. So the companies that are successful are the ones that also know where they stand in terms of this. This is quite a nice graph, I would say, or a representation of consideration for you as to how far as a business you, with your firm characteristics, I mean firm as in organisation, what you offer to the world in terms of your products and your core competencies and what you're really good at, and how far you want to take what you have and take that as it is into the markets that you decide you want to target and to sell into and supply, versus the other extreme, which would be looking at what the market it is asking for, where the opportunities are, and seeing, basically adapting to that as opposed to what you may have as your competency and what is the products and what makes your company great. And it's finding between the two what the market wants, needs, where the opportunities are, and what you as a business can offer, what products and knowledge you have that could really kind of come together on the spectrum somewhere. And generally it tends to be a combination of the two, of some adaptation to obviously the market, but equally trying to see and take what you have and get the market to appreciate some of those potential differentiators, unique selling points as well. And it's understanding for you where and how far you're willing to be flexible with this. You need to understand that before you start going out to the market and changing too much maybe to what the market is asking for, or being too inflexible and not being prepared to change some of what you are offering in terms of your product, your packaging, your pricing. You need to think through where the tolerances may or may not be for that, and being open to some level of flexibility. We're again working at the moment with a manufacturer in the Czech Republic, and we are supplying into a pharmacy chain in the UAE, in the United Arab Emirates. And again, there's been a lot of, it's worked because the manufacturer, we've worked on the parameters. It's a private label opportunity. So within that, there's often quite a lot of scope for the customer to try and customize a lot of what they want, because they say, we know what our market wants, we know what we want, we know what we need from a legal and a regulatory perspective. And it's trying to work through all that together that doesn't take the manufacturer too far away from what they are actually capable of producing as well. So there's been times where we've had to have discussions and be quite very clear, this, we cannot do this, we can do this, we cannot do that. And having that and knowing that yourself, and when you talk to people internationally, and being strong on that sometimes is important as well, and being clear about what it is you can and can't offer. Next, I would say somebody also, so you the mindset and the commitment is there at I would say at a high level of the organization. You have a plan and a roadmap, you know where you're willing to be flexible or not to be flexible, and open in that approach. Then you need to have somebody within the organization, or it can be in-house or external, who owns international, that takes the ownership for driving this and making sure that what success looks like as per your export plan is delivered, and delivered within the timescales and the objectives that you set as a business. And as I say, this can be internally, and maybe there's somebody within an organization who is skilled, is willing, wants to do it, either can be trained up if they need to be and have some training in it, or you might want to outsource that I guess responsibility to a third party that works closely with you. It's something we do at Bols Global with a few brands on an ongoing basis on the market development side of things. It could be that, it could be technical expertise that you might need to bring in, and don't be afraid of that, but you need to be clear as to how and who is going to do this for you. I mean, to give you an example where we've worked on an outsource basis, one of our clients they were at a point where they had grown the business successfully and wanted to sell within a fairly short time frame. So for them, when they looked at their internal resource and capabilities, they felt that there wasn't anybody within the organisation who could accomplish what they needed to achieve internationally in a fairly short space of time. So they brought BOS Global on board to basically facilitate and drive the international development. So we led on some of the trade shows that we were participating in. We led on market entry. So we got them into new markets through various export partners within about 12 to 15 months, which really helped them to then sell the business successfully as well. And it was great because they could dip into our resources and expertise when they needed to and for this purpose. So have a think about, again, what could work for you, and think about who is working on the international, or who could be that person, that entity, that organisation that could help you. That could be in different aspects of internationalisation, locally, internationally, government-led, private. There's a number of options, and there is a wealth of information and support out there. So don't be afraid to ask for it if you feel you need to do that as well. And finally, although definitely not the least important, I would say, and often overlooked, is to not neglect what I call the 3 L's, which are a lot of the finer details around exporting. So once you have the opportunity, the engagement with a partner, and potentially the first sales, it's the other aspects of that, getting that product into the market, that you need to make sure that you get right, because neglecting that or getting it wrong could be very costly for a lot of businesses, as I've seen over the years. So when I say the 3 L's, I mean legal, logistics, and labeling. So if we have a quick look at the legal side of things, that comes down to your registration in those markets and the documentation that you will need to present in order for your product to clear customs, to be registered legitimately in that market as well. And to not do it can cost you very dearly. We had an experience once with somebody that we knew in the UAE who had purchased some baby food that they believed to be halal certified. They were told it was on the packaging, but actually they couldn't produce the documentation necessarily that was recognised by the UAE authorities as an approved and certified body for halal certification. So the problem came that the product arrived at the port, but it wasn't allowed in because obviously the documentation wasn't recognised, and the halal certification wasn't recognised by the UAE authorities. So it was ultimately, it sat in the port for quite a long time, and ultimately it was destroyed. So there was a lot of lost time, effort, and obviously money, not only in storage of the products, but equally of destroying them, and the opportunity overall. So, make sure that the markets you're selling into, you are aware of the registration that's required for your products, what certification is obviously recognised, and again that applies to organic producers, and how your organic certification, where is it valid, is it recognised, and then making sure that when you send the products into those markets, that the certifications that you need to provide are also all correct and sent in time as well. So yeah, the other thing is logistics. So again, thinking about when you take your product into new markets, that actual transportation, the chain of that. Incoterms, I'm not sure again if you're aware, but that is the terms in which you are selling your product and the responsibilities between the buyer and the seller. So be clear, and that comes also back to your offer and your pricing strategy, but also it's important from a level of responsibility between the buyer and the seller. So if there's issues, if you're selling sea freight and something happens on the water, or at port it lands and there's a problem, whose responsibility is that? And that will also depend on the Incoterms that you sell to. So be aware of that as well, and the impact that it can have on you. Another thing to think about is temperatures. Like, for example, depending on where you're selling from and where you're going to, you might need to temperature control products that you potentially wouldn't. Just again, from a safety perspective, that again will add extra cost, which is a consideration on your pricing strategy. And also the actual transportation, depending on what your product is, your packaging. And I've seen that where products have been packaged very well for their domestic market, but actually once you take them overseas, in terms of with air freight, if it's going in with cabin pressure, sea freight with temperatures on and off the dock, and also a bit more the handling of it. I've seen it where products have arrived into certain markets and they've just not been possible to sell. We worked with a snack brand, and actually their products were great in the UK, but once we took them into other markets, when they arrived, the packaging and the film that they were putting their products into just wasn't robust enough, and the products were going rancid because they needed to have a much higher level of film and packaging, much more robust packaging to make it possible as well. So think about that and how you may need to adapt that. And the labelling as the last aspect is, again, making sure that what you actually have to translate, if you're translating on the labels, is correct, not only from a translation point of view, but also from a compliance point of view. And that can be something that people don't consider. They translate the label and it may be grammatically and word for word correct, but actually, is that recognised and accepted by the market into which you're selling? And an example of that would be, for example, with the Middle East and the Gulf markets. If you look at Arabic, obviously there are several varieties of Arabic, and if you have an Arabic labelling on your packaging, on your product, then actually it may be accepted in some markets, but not in others. And actually some markets, for example, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, are much stricter on additional information that needs to be on the packaging that, for example, other Arab-speaking markets won't require. One example, we had a problem with one of our clients where the Arabic had been translated on the packaging in terms of it was correct, but actually the use of the word, one of the words of the ingredients, had a religious reference that in Saudi Arabia they did not accept. So they actually rejected the labelling on the packaging on that basis, even though it was correct and it was fine in the other markets, but Saudi would not allow. Also, there's new regulations and these change all the time. Again, Saudi Arabia and the UAE are making it mandatory to have nutritional information as well as the ingredients on packaging, and that's coming into place imminently. So again, being able to keep up to date with what's happening on the labelling and make sure it's compliant is important, and there are lots of organisations and experts that can help in this field, and it's don't overlook making sure that that is right to not cause you problems whilst you're entering the market or further down the line as well. So in terms of just kind of summing this up and key takeaways, I am an optimist and I'm positive about the exporting experience, albeit there are always a number of challenges and it's not always easy, but if you are committed and patient, often as a long-term process, and if you have the global ambition to export, you can do it. But you need to make sure you know what you're doing in terms of what your offer is, what your plan is, where you're going, and stick to that wherever possible. Keep the focus, keep the commitment. Then make sure that you have the right resources, the right people, the right information and the support to really get you growing if you're already doing it, and accelerating that or starting that journey if you aren't already. So just to finish really, have a think. I'd like you to think about what your next steps are as a business, as an individual involved in international trade at the moment, or maybe not, but you would like to be. So what are you going to do off the back of this webinar, and in terms of being able to start the journey, continue, make more progress? So could it be something around, are you going to write an actual export strategy and plan? If you don't have one, put something down and have a formal document. Are you going to start investigating new markets and looking at some market selection? If you're already in some markets, can you do more research? There's still a lot online that can be done, despite the fact that obviously it's challenging at the moment to travel. Are you going to start some market outreach once you've identified some markets? And I wouldn't be afraid of that, despite the current climate. There is still appetite globally for products, and we've seen that obviously food and drink as an industry, certainly retail has not been as suffering like certain other industries through the pandemic has. And make sure, maybe perhaps as well, maybe you need to understand some more around compliance, regulation for your products as well. Is there something you can do in the short term, people you can speak to, reach out to understand that maybe you're finding is a bit of a block for you at the moment? So have a think, and I would encourage you to write something down, think about what you're going to do off the back of this for your international development. I just wanted to mention before I finish that we do have a number of resources also available on our website, bolsglobal.com. We have a beginner's guide to exporting, which is a completely free short guide, available in English at the moment, but we are going to translate into Spanish. I'm aware that there's a lot of Spanish speakers on the webinar today, so we'll make that available for you, and Gretel and the team will be sending that out in the follow-up to this webinar as well. We also have some other guides on there around global trends, some third parties who have written reports, given their expertise on the website. So do check out our resources hub if you're interested, and sign up if you want to receive any more information from us on various global markets in the future. And that's it. Thank you very much for your time, and let's open up for any questions.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Victoria. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep, I can hear you.
So we're now starting the Q&A section. So as I mentioned before, you can write your questions on the Zoom chat in both English or Spanish for Victoria to answer. We already received many of them, so we're going to start to use the time, the little time that we have still. So Victoria, I have here a question for you. Actually, I think I'm going to put the three one after the other one, because there are like questions regarding the pandemic situation. So I'm going to start with the questions. What are you experiencing as the major global trends during this time of COVID?
Of COVID, yeah. I think there's a number of things that are coming out of this, which again can be beneficial for the companies that are willing to adapt to the new environments that we're finding. Online, without a doubt, e-commerce, online retail sales for food and drink has absolutely gone through the roof across the globe. I mean, if you look at the UK, we are quite strong on e-commerce generally anyway, but again, I was reading some statistics earlier on that the online channel penetration in the UK will go up about nearly 12% of the overall grocery market this year, which is about 75% growth just this year through the pandemic. The UAE, which we do a lot of work in, they and the Gulf in general are quite slow on online and those types of retail channels. It's been incredible, the change that's happening. The supermarkets are now offering online shopping, click and collect type services like Carrefour have started that in the UAE, and their growth has been absolutely incredible. So companies that are able to adapt and offer online, and that doesn't have to be internationally, obviously, but even just to their domestic markets where they've not had that offering before, has been a key driver for change and opportunity as well. I think then if you look within the actual categories themselves, obviously longer life products and quite basic products have been on the increase. We suffered here in the UK shortages around things, basic products like flour and eggs in the early days of the lockdown, because people were taking more to home baking again, and because they couldn't go out, actually being much more at home cooking and innovative in their in what they're offering from that side of things. So home baking kits also with the ready mixes have been again popular in a number of markets. And again, we can't ignore the health and wellness aspect of it. I mentioned, and I think you did, we do some work in, for example, supplements. Well, the demand for immunity-based products and offerings, so just even general vitamin C and zinc supplements have absolutely gone through the roof, and a lot of the supplement manufacturers are fully booked for production for the foreseeable future because of that. So and I also think that frozen is quite an interesting category, that now again, because of in some ways lack of availability of fresh fruit and vegetables in some markets, they've had to turn to other alternatives, and having frozen product that they can obviously utilize, that's got a much more longer period for consumption, again I think has seen some good increase and demand as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I have another question that is somehow related to this pandemic situation, and it says, what will be the variant to prioritize for those who have the possibility of exporting, considering we are transiting this pandemic?
Say that again, sorry, Gretel. So
what will be the variants to prioritize? So what are the prioritizations we have to take into account while if we have the possibility to export while we are suffering all this pandemic situation?
So in terms of being able to optimize opportunities, I guess, for exporting at the moment, the variants, you mean in terms of the products themselves, or the offer that you have? Is there any more detail on that?
No, that's the questions I received for the participants. I don't know exactly if they're targeting something particularly.
Okay. If you can ask them for a bit more detail, I think, I mean, in terms of variants, do they meet, just is it product specific? Is it about the offer? You varying your offer to the market?
We can give a few minutes to the person that made this question, so maybe he can specify a little bit. So we are going to go forward with the next questions. You mentioned some products that are very on the top roof right now for selling. So there are a person that's very interesting. So what are the most popular products, which you were talking a little bit about it, and where can you find information about it?
There is lots. The good thing with the internet these days, and obviously that accessibility of information, there are plenty of resources that you can access. It depends on what category, obviously, you're talking about. You can get kind of overviews. So I would say, again, I'm not completely au fait within obviously South America, but there'll obviously be with chambers of commerce, governmental organisations, people like yourself, Gretel, that I'm sure have access to all sorts of resources that can be useful if you're trying to research markets. What we tend to use with our clients is we have access to consumer profiling, so things around Euromonitor or Passport. It is generally a chargeable research document, but we can access those with quite specific for each market category data, where the growth, where the trends are happening. Mintel's another one. Kantar, some of our clients have access to Kantar or Nielsen data, which is more retailer led as well within specific categories. Then when it comes to more generic, I guess, advice and data, if you were looking at ease of doing business, there are rankings with that. You could look at the World Bank statistics. The EU within Europe have a number of free guides available, and I can give you some of those links if you want as well, Gretel, that I'm happy to sort of let everybody have in terms of a few websites that will give you some statistics or where you could start some of that market intelligence piece, because obviously I'm aware that, you know, traveling at the moment and getting into markets for some of that intelligence is quite challenging. The other thing with the obviously online space, thankfully, is that if companies and retailers are putting their products online, as a consumer, obviously you can go and buy them, but as somebody researching a particular market, you can go online and equally search for any potential competition, for example, anything that's available in your category already for those supermarkets, for those consumers. That could also be quite a bit of interesting intelligence and that you can do, you know, from your desk. Basically, there is quite a lot you can gain insight wise as that.
Okay, that's great. Okay, I'm going to keep going with the questions because there are many of them. So one of the questions is, do you help in exporting services such as marketing research within the organic farmland regions?
In terms of, I mean, it's something that we offer as a business. We will undertake market research for clients in certain aspects and areas as well. So it's something we do as part of our project work. So, you know, if we go back to some of the examples that I've given, you know, we've undertaken, for example, into the Middle East, we've looked at products for children, young children, and where the opportunities with them could be. Where we go back to the alcohol side of things, then, you know, we also were looking at where the opportunities are into certain markets as well, and where the alcohol consumption rate is. So we can undertake some of that research piece if companies are interested in it. And if it's not something that we could do, depending on exactly what it is, we also know other organisations that we could signpost to as well. So, so yeah.
Okay, that's great. Good. Then I have here a good one for you as well. What are the limitations that we can find to business from Latin America to the United Kingdom or the rest of Europe?
Interesting. That is a good question. Is one going back to culture, I think, and ways of working. I think within Europe, again, Europe, we're talking about a continent, and even within Europe, I find when I speak to the French, to the German, to the Swedes, again, we have different ways of working. I think European mentality can be more quite business, quite straight down to business, quite task orientated, wanting to get results quite quickly and you know, move. My again experience is, you know, within Latin America it takes a bit longer, and it's more relationship building. It's about making sure that you're comfortable with the people that you're working with, the companies you're engaging with, you have an understanding and a knowledge of each other, and that mutual trust which needs to be established first before you would move to necessarily actually transacting and doing business deals. Whereas within Europe it can be much more the other way around, about, you know, is there a business opportunity, and then let's work through that, and off the back of that you might develop and establish some nice relationships from a professional capacity, but it's not usually the key driver within Europe, I would say. So yeah, it's you have to consider those different perspectives. I think the best advice is always trying to understand the viewpoint of the other person. Like, you don't have to agree necessarily in terms of the way you approach things, but you have to be able to agree on a solution and being able to conduct business together to get to that final solution together, albeit that you might have different perspectives around how and where and what and everything that happens along the way. And I think clear communication is key to that as well, and being communicative. I think there's actually, and I think with the pandemic at the moment, and people's level of communication is a bit more challenging, even though in some ways a lot of people are obviously a lot more online and visible in some ways. But I'm finding that just communicate, I would say. A lot of the time people sometimes don't, and it's about, it's not about the silences, it's about what you can say and understand each other. And if you're not sure, ask for that understanding and get that clarity, which isn't always isn't always easy, different cultures.
We know that, yes. I have here the explanation from the very same person that made the previous questions that we didn't understood which variant she was actually meaning. And she's talking about the variants of commercialization right now in this pandemic, because I think she's meaning like you cannot go right now to a trade show or a fair, internationally speaking, to make connections. It's like you have to find other ways to do business nowadays.
Right, that's what I thought. Is it more about the process of it as opposed to the, that's fine. So yeah, I mean, you're right. Obviously we can't all get on planes at the moment and go out to see different people, different trade shows. Use the online space does have advantages. I mean, I've been on, just thinking about this week, I've been on a call this morning shortly before this to Dubai. I've spoken to people in Kuwait and I'm sat here here in the UK, and actually that can still be done, some of that work in terms of the commercialization process from where you are at the moment. So using the online, LinkedIn, I find, is a great tool to be able to find people. If we go back to the alcohol brand, I've been prospecting for them last week. I've gone onto LinkedIn. I've had a look at people who are in the industry specifically, that are maybe selling internationally in the industry, having a look at some of their connections and thinking, okay, is there in the target markets? Let's try and connect with some of those people, have a look at who they are. Are they distributors? Are they retailers? Are they hotel chains? And also, so you can actually, through your own network that you have on LinkedIn or by building it, reach out to other people. You can get quite a lot of intelligence around that through online. So LinkedIn I think is a great tool for people on the business to business side. You don't need to be a premium member or be paying for it. Just build your network through the free version, connect with people, look at other people's connections where you can. Some of them are locked down, some of them aren't though. So if they're in a particular industry and working overseas, you might be able to, through their connections, find somebody that could be interesting or a market opportunity and approach them that way as well, through some mutual connections. So I find that quite useful. Another tip would be, obviously the trade shows aren't happening, but we still have websites with previous attendees, previous exhibitors for trade shows in the past. So again, having a look through previous lists that might be available online of exhibitors at different conferences, trade shows related to your sector or category, you might be able to again pick up some opportunities and be able to find out about other companies that could, you could either sell to or could be part of your supply chain that you could add to. There's quite a lot you can do without obviously physically being able to move at the moment on that side of things.
Okay, thank you. That was good tips. We're running out of time, so I'm going to make you the last questions, and maybe you can make it, I don't know, in a few words to explain this. But anyways, there are a lot of questions that we weren't able to show now to talk about it. So we promised to all the participants we're going to send these questions to Victoria, so she have the possibility to answer them, you all, and we will send the answers as well. So that's what we want to do, because it's a pity that we don't have the time enough to answer them all. But I made a very short questions to finish the Q&A section. Which global markets would you suggest targeting right now?
Yeah, great question. I think it depends on your product. So you have to look at your product and decide whether you want to look at the larger markets for your category, or if you want to go a bit more niche into some maybe unknown developing markets. I think if you look at organic, you can't, if we talk about organic, you can't deny obviously the size of, say, the US market, which is huge. But equally, I would say is that the right move for you? Obviously, from Latin America, there's a certain level of accessibility, so that may be great, but there is a lot of regulation, and potentially, because it is such a big market, it can also be quite a competitive one. It may be that, depending on your specific product, some of the European markets where there's clearly a lot of appetite, yes, they're smaller in size, but there's high growth in places like France and the Nordics. We're seeing a lot of opportunity in health and wellness in those markets. It might be worth, yes, they're smaller, yes, they're a little bit further away, but actually, potentially you could navigate more into those. And if you're navigating European culture as opposed to American culture, it could work more favorably, potentially as well. So I think it's a fluffy answer with saying it depends, but it's understanding as well what your product offering is, where the market potential obviously is, what your preference is, and what the vision, where do you want to go and how big do you want to be with it, and then taking it forward in that way as well. But there's lots of opportunities around the world. I see that all the time, and we're working different areas. A lot of it as well is fundamentally it's finding the right people in those markets to work with, regardless of where you go. It's always about finding the right partners, whatever your route to market is, the right people to work with in that environment that really can support you and champion your brand or your product, and do great things and grow together and build. So always a tough one though.
Oh, Victoria, thank you so much for your answers, and thank you everybody that participates with questions. Thank you so much. So we have reached the end of this webinar. I hope you have enjoyed it. We thank you deeply, Victoria, for your valuable contribution to this SDS focus. And we would like to all attendees, this is very important, to all attendees to complete the satisfaction survey that we have sent via email, so where you can request also an attendance certificate to this webinar. Additionally, as Victoria already mentioned, we're going to send you all the handbook, a beginner guide to exporting, both in English and Spanish version, along with the PDF of Victoria's presentation. So all this information will be sent for those who complete the survey, so that's very important. So thank you once again to all our sponsors whose support in every edition is priceless for us. LETIS certification body, Onscreen interpreters, Blumen, Dazon, and Bose Global. And to all the companies and organizations that accompany us today: Ovis 21, Grassfeed Group, La Pastoril, OAME, FoodTech, BioTeam, IQS Inspection, Bodegas de Argentina. And of course, to all our dear attendants. So thank you so much for joining us in this SDS Focus Online. We hope to meet you again to continue exchanging information and training. See you soon and stay safe. Thank you very much.
We are a company dedicated to the audit and certification of national and international standards of quality and sustainability in products and processes. Our values define our daily work: loyalty, ethics, transparency, integrity, and sustainability. More than 20 years of experience, more than 2,000 certified clients worldwide, and the recognition of public and private organizations support us as a leading company in the sector. Our mission is to contribute to the development of our client. Therefore, we grant added value to their products and processes so that they can differentiate themselves and access competitive and demanding markets, generating new and attractive business opportunities. Our wide service offer, our extensive network of producers, processors, and traders, our presence in fairs and seminars in different countries, and our growing internationalization make LETIS a link to the world. We distinguish ourselves for accompanying our clients throughout the certification process. We have an interdisciplinary team of professionals specialized in each industry and sector, committed to providing the highest quality service in a personalized way, generating long-term relationships with our clients and the community. With national and international recognition, LETIS keeps the essence of its origins as a family business based in the city of Rosario, Argentina, created by women inspired by providing a significant contribution to society. We have a strong social commitment. We support the Sustainable Trade Sessions program, with the objective of contributing to the dissemination of knowledge about quality and production systems that allow the implementation of good practices and care of the environment. Through our standards and services, we guarantee to be at the forefront of national and international certifications. Our prestige and credibility were key to transcending the borders of Argentina. Today, we are present in all continents to meet the demand for quality certifications in the most important markets in the world. Our daily work is our contribution to society for a future where ecological, sustainable, and environmentally friendly practices prevail. LETIS, all their certifications, all the markets.